With some shifts in the metagame revolving around chaos-inducing AD junglers, Trundle has found himself in a very interesting and favorable position as a defensive-focused jungler right now. He has a kit that can neutralize all of the skirmish-heavy junglers in the game right now, and while he carries a simple kit, there's a lot he can do with it. Welcome to the ultimate guide to Trundle in Season 11. Here's a quick breakdown of how we'll be going over the video. I'll touch on general concepts of Trundle's purpose as a champion and what success looks like in games that you are doing well on him. We'll then discuss different components of his kit and how we can work better to optimize each one of these. This includes going over different jungle matchups, rune optimizations, ability maxing, your build, pathing, how to play out ganks, and how to play out each phase of the game. But first, if you haven't yet, please subscribe for more content like this, but let's get going. Let's kick off with his rune set, in which Trundle has a couple of decent options. The primary one that most people take is actually press the attack, which complements well with his auto attack heavy kit. Being able to instantly deal extra damage in skirmishes by proccing it basically instantly when combined with his natural stat suppressing ability allows him to randomly stat check champions that would otherwise be pretty busted in skirmish scenarios. I'd also think that Conqueror is a decent choice as an overall item since it provides so much damage. However, the only reason I think PTA is better is because Trundle doesn't innately have very many AD scalings to benefit off of Conqueror. Xin Zhao, for example, another champion with a very similar style, much prefers Conqueror because he actually has some pretty insane scalings. Trundle really only has his Q for this case, so he doesn't benefit as much. Following up on the PTA Keystone primary, Trundle will follow suit with most Triumph primary pages. Triumph, Legend Alacrity or Tenacity, and Coup de Grace are all very common and effective choices here. You have a couple of choices for your secondary tree as well, depending on the matchup of team compositions. Inspiration is always a good choice, with Free Ass Boots and Cosmic Insight being two good runes in every situation. If mobility is more of a focus for you, then you can opt into Sorcery, going Water Walking and Nimbus Cloak for some speed. For rune stats, you should always go Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and your resistance of choice depending on the jungle matchup. Speaking of matchups, this is where Trundle shines as a champion when picked in the right scenario. His kit is literally built to yoink the enemy stats, which brings even the strongest dueling champions to their knees. Skirmishers like Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Jarvan all feel like they can't do anything when Trundle takes all of their AD and starts beating them with his bat like it's nothing. Tank junglers also struggle against Trundle because he can also take their resistances to his benefit, making him equally tanky without needing to invest as much gold into building the same tanky items. I'd say he struggles the most against champions that don't fit into either category here and don't really allow him to thrive. So think either champions like Karthus, Lilia, Elise, Echo, or Talia that can ignore his strengths with their magic damage and still take him down, or assassins like Kha'Zix that would also give him a hard time because his trades are very wacky and unorthodox. It is a bit of a mixed bag, but Trundle without a doubt counters most of the greatest champions in the game right now, and whenever these champions are good, Trundle is naturally also good. One other thing to consider in Trundle's matchups is the potential for creative use of his pillar. He can break the ankles of many enemy champions because of the nature of its interrupt. Lots of champions in the game can have their dashes or their movement greatly reduced because of this, and I think you can get some pretty good advantages by making good use of this. Alright, let's be real. Trundle does not have many combos. Mechanically, as long as you have hands, you can probably be a pretty decent Trundle player. All the skills required to be a good Trundle come in with your game sense, but we'll quickly brush over some quick things to keep in mind just so that you're maximizing his damage. The main one, of course, to cover is that his Q, Chomp, is an auto attack reset. With that in mind, you should totally get into the habit of weaving his normal auto attacks with Chomp because it effectively increases your attack speed, and that effectively increases your maximum damage output as well. Another thing to note is that your W has no cast time, so you want to pop it once a fight gets started so you can maximize the value you get from it. But Trundle is otherwise a very intuitive champion to pick up, so I would recommend you just familiarize yourself with this instead of worrying about fancy combos. Trundle's build can have some weird variety based on the role that he needs to fill that game. Since he's a bruiser that generally has a single target damage profile, the value he brings is focused on his ability to take quite a beating from the enemy while still being able to persist in the fight. Right now, his best mythic is for sure Divine Sunderer for its insane stat profile overall and the ability to proc with Sheen. The healing mechanic it also provides is really helpful for Trundle, as his kit is very focused on high amounts of sustain. Trundle loves items like Thornmail and Spirit Visage as well, because it allows him to really take a beating from his opponents and be that damage absorber for his team. Feel free to change out the balance between your damage levels and your survivability based on your team comp and the role you need to fill on the team. Like other junglers in his class such as Lee Sin or Jarvan, Trundle's clear path will be pretty focused on being able to be relatively fluent and being able to be in the right place at the right time to take high quality fights and not focusing on simply getting a lot of jungle camps cleared up. Sometimes this can mean even literally clearing your red and then getting a gank off at level 2 just to put on a ton of pressure on the enemy laner or to unlock them to play the wave as they wish. The key to knowing what path is good is to keep a constant watch on your laner's wave states and capitalizing on it based on identifying what gank angles are good. However, in a situation where the game state is pretty slow and there isn't really much to be thinking about, I'd say the clear you'd be going for most is the buff gromp buff clear, which allows you to become level 3 and then look for an opportunity to get a high quality gank off when it comes. If you are about to clear your third camp and you see that there's a low chance that a gank opportunity will be there, it is also perfectly okay to alter the clear and do another camp just so you're constantly maintaining a high level of tempo. Much like almost everything within Trundle's kit, I would consider his gank patterns relatively simple to understand and pick up. There's not many tools to think about here, but there is a lot to consider when you think beyond face value. Assuming that you start behind the enemy, using your Q and W is relatively simple. Chomp Slow is a great way to keep up the chase and maximize your damage along the way, so I'd recommend using it constantly while you're ganking. With Frozen Domain, the main thing to keep in mind is that the domain is created based on the direction you are facing, so try to place the circle such that you'll be maximizing its value from the great buffs that it grants you. Your ultimate doesn't really change much about your gank pattern other than that you can either use it at the beginning or end of a gank depending on the nature of the champion. Into tank laners, it can be really effective to take their resistances with it so you can deal more damage. In certain situations, however, it can also be high value to leave your ult until the back end of a gank so that you can use the burn damage to kill off opponents. By far, the portion of Trundle's ganks with the most depth is actually the pillar. It sounds really weird on the surface, but there's a lot of ways that you can manipulate the pillar to your advantage. The most satisfying one would be to disrupt the enemy, either through breaking their walking pattern or even better by interrupting their dash against opponents that have that available. If you sweet spot Trundle's pillar, not only does it apply the slow, but it also pops the enemy up, effectively stunning them for half a second. This disruption mechanic is even better when you can minimize the value of enemy mobility tools or use it to cut off escape patterns as well. There's still value in being able to just upfront the pillar and apply the slow, but I think the best way to get value out of it is to for sure prolong the enemy's escape. The same sort of mentality continues when we apply Trundle's usability in the teamfight stage. If you're looking for an insane impact champion that can just be the main reason for the fight to start, you're probably looking at the wrong champion. That's where you get your Jarvans, your Lee Sins, and your Xin Zhaos of the world. Trundle, on the other hand, is a specialist in cock blocking the opponent and literally slapping them silly when they misplay their engage. With tools like Chomp that reduces the enemy's AD and Pillar to create space for your team, it's extremely helpful to have Trundle in front to back or defensive comps that thrive off of that environment. If you have hypercarry immobile AD carries or have a strong poke and disengage comp, Trundle's really effective in being able to neutralize enemy teams, and it makes him extremely annoying to deal with in that regard. Trundle is also exceptional at absorbing damage for his team and serving as that frontline stat stick to eat all of the damage, while his team can focus on dealing damage themselves. As we mentioned in the build section, Trundle's ability to itemize defensively and take the enemy's stats makes him really hard to kill in this regard, and absorbing that pressure makes it that much easier for your team to have their own impact as well. So there you have it. This is Trundle in a nutshell right now, and although he is not too hard to pick up, I'd say, I think he's incredibly useful and has a strong niche in the meta right now. As always, hope this guide helps you guys out, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay fresh.